Okay, so from the last talk we had, you mentioned that you have gone through succession planning a lot of times. So I guess to start, like, if you want to talk a little bit about your background and your experience with succession planning.
Okay, so mine was all event driven. So was my family. So my grandfather lived with us. He didn't own the company, but he ran a gas company. So when he died, just so happens that my dad had cancer, and
Oh,
my grandfather died right before my dad. So I watched my grandfather pass away, and I watched his just estate being transferred to his two boys, my dad and his brother. They both owned gas companies.
wow.
So then it just the awful story was like 2 years later, my dad gets his cancer back. He dies 4 years later.
Oh,
So I go through it again. I actually helped my dad handle my grandfather's estate in like 72. And then I did my dad's estate when he died in 77. So I had a lot of practice at estate
wow.
planning. We had family meetings before they were popular in the 1970s.
Wow. That is so much to go through. Was there anything looking back that you would either change about what you did or that you think you handled really well?
Yeah, I think I told you this last time. I had great mentors. I had my dad, my grandfather, my mother, my cousin. They were all in the gas business. So I grew up in the gas business. I developed a passion for the gas business when I was a teenager. I just didn't
Mm.
know it till I was in my 20s. But no, nothing would change because my parents, my family believes in this like generational competency. So it's pretty easy for me to delegate a lot of work to Abity because he's very competent.
Hmm.
And I think I told you, my dad, almost on his deathbed, he told me when I was in my early 20s to get active in trade associations. It was called NWSA back then. So whether it's Larry Kistler or John Behringer or Bob Jackson, all these guys coached me up after my dad died. I can't change my dad dying young, obviously, so that's not going to change. So I just got thrown into it. I had a lot of good mentors. My dad set up the company in a smart way, so it was easy to buy it, and I was lucky.
That's amazing. So if there was someone in your position now, like in present day, going through something similar, would your advice be to them get involved in the trade associations as well, or would you add to that?
My advice would be like probably two things. In a family business, we actually have the school of PIT, they call it IE, Entrepreneurial Excellence, Institute of Entrepreneurial Excellence. And they teach us about these circles. One circle is family, one circle is business management, and the other is business ownership. The
Mm.
intersection of all those circles is what's so difficult because if you're an owner, if you manage it and you're a family person, it's difficult. It makes it emotional, the whole thing. My
Yeah.
TV just went on.
Oh
So
no.
that's what's difficult is family business is more emotional. So in a way, I was lucky because when my dad died, he had it set up already. When my mother died, it was already set up.
Mm.
Because I had cancer when I was 39, I had to set it up. So we kind of did
Oh
early
wow.
planning, looking at family business and ownership, and we had to deal with all that stuff. So my only advice is deal with it. It's going to
Mhm.
happen if you have a family business, whether it's some awful thing like death or awful thing like divorce or awful thing like kids quitting the business or parents getting fed up or kids getting fed up. It's going to happen in family business. So my
Yeah.
advice is get ready for it. It's going to happen in succession. And the second thing is have a lot of family meetings, work it out before it happens. We were lucky we
And
had a plan before it happened.
yeah, no, that's amazing. Wally was saying something very similar.
That's because Wally's my best buddy. That's why I've learned a lot from Wally.
Yeah, he's great. But do you have siblings? Did you have to go through any issues of hierarchies or anything like that?
Yeah, good question. Yes, the way ours was set up, Marie, is when my dad died, he parents usually like to do things equally, I think. So
Yeah.
he gifted a third of the company to my sisters and I, a ninth and ninth and ninth. And
Oh,
then he
wow.
wanted someone to buy out the other two-thirds. So I'm the one that bought out the two-thirds. They all had an
Oh,
option to. They chose not to. So then my sisters and I worked together for about 25 or 30 years. The beauty of our deal
wow.
is just because my dad died young and we had to have written rules. We have a rule that if the minority stockholders want to cash out, we actually cash them out. So even though it's not easy, My sisters did a great job. They're extremely active in the business, did a wonderful job. Yet they
Oh.
wanted to cash out at the end. So the company bought all their stock. It made it easy for them to leave by giving them money. And it was already set up. The valuation and the formula and all that stuff was set up.
Mm.
So it wasn't real emotional to negotiate my sister's leaving. Those circles, once again, the family, the business management, and the business ownership, where they intersect is where the problems are, and it's where the
Mhm.
opportunity is. So we just practiced because we had been through it before. That's my advice. Put it in writing, have a plan. It's going to happen.
Yes, I love that. That's great. And because you had a plan, I'm sure everyone felt it was very transparent of what was going to happen and what they could expect to have happen. So now with Abity, how we don't need to share certain aspects of this, but and you can only answer whatever you want to answer. But do you guys have a plan in place? What's that looking like?
Yeah, the same stuff's in writing that when my younger sister wanted to sell her 1/9 of the company at a board meeting, we have company board meetings with owners. Abity volunteered to buy out my sister's stock. So, like me in Abity's mid 20s, she borrowed some money and bought out her aunt.
Mhm.
And that the company would have bought out her stock. But so that made
Okay.
Abity a stockholder that she purchased her own stock. We like that. So typically we buy stock, family, and then after we buy some, then some is gifted to us after we buy it. And that's what Abity did.
Oh.
And Abity, of course, much better than me, got active in trade associations like her grandfather told me. I told her that he told me that, and Abity obviously is very active in trade associations. It's helped her many ways in business as it's helped me. So whether it's GATA, IOMA, BIG, CGA, IWDC, or that Institute of Entrepreneurial Excellence in Pittsburgh, they all help. And it helps us
Yeah.
sharpen the saw, so to speak.
No,
So
totally. I
Abby was
always
always ready. She was ready when she was 25 or 26, and now she's about 10 years older, and she's rocking and rolling.
cool. Okay. And so it sounds like okay, have you had any hardships with succession planning? And what
Yes.
have those been?
Yeah, the hardships have been, even though it's event driven, prenuptial agreements, divorce. My one sister got divorced. My other sister's husband was a guy who started track about Jim Glessner. He did a great job for
Oh,
broadcast. The hardships have been my sisters and my brother-in-laws have come in the company. They've left, they've come, they've left. So it's been a little bit of a revolving door. So then if we didn't have the way to buy them out, it could have caused problems. I mean, I'd be a liar to say there weren't certain problems with all the siblings. Once upon a time, I had two sisters, two brother-in-laws, and my mother, and I owned 2/3 of the stock. So it was
wow.
difficult sometimes if mom got triangulized and stuff, which used to happen. That happens. That's those circles again, the family circle. Something
Yeah.
happens to the family, and then it jumps over to the business, and it jumps over the ownership. So I talk about those circles a lot because we've had trouble. Pitt teaches us stay in the circle. If you have a family
Yeah.
problem, you talk about it in the family. You don't talk about business problems at Thanksgiving dinner, and you don't
Mhm.
talk about the back porch construction at the company board meeting. So learning to stay in the right circle was a learning experience. It was hard for me. My
I
passion sometimes got me, my mouth got my tail in trouble a little
yeah. No, I think that's like really good advice for even that I could implement because I when you're in a family ran company, you're just getting pulled in so many directions and the emotion is
bit.
so much higher. So actually this question, I posted something on LinkedIn to see if I would get any hits of people sending in questions and Abby was one of them, which is great. So let me pull up her question because it's a really good one. So she said, "What can next gens do to get some skin in the game? What are recommended and even creative ways to buy into the business? Do next gens have to wait for grand exits? Are there ways we can financially invest prior to gifting?" So have you guys done
Yeah.
anything like that? Like creative ways to get involved for next gen?
Yeah, she's gonna set me up. Yes, yes, we have. So yeah, the way we did it, like I bought the company from my dad's estate, but my dad was a pretty smart guy, but he had a couple years to think about this with his lawyer. So what my dad did, he put the company In one company owned all the buildings and all the cylinders, and that was gifted to my mother. And the other company was the operating company. I bought that for my dad's estate. So you're allowed to pay kind of slowly. So our deal is we buy it for high numbers, but we have 10 years to buy it. So whether we're buying my sister's stock or when I was buying the company from the estate, if you take the a long-term buyer, it becomes more like a mortgage than a loan, so to speak. We've also made different kind of stock. We have voting stock and non-voting stock. So I bought all the voting stock. It's equal. It's worth the same. That way, when I bought it, I gained control of the company. And some of the minority stockholders had non-voting stock were gifted to them. So my dad gifted the non-voting stock. We bought the voting stock. And that way it's worth the same, but the people running the company had control. Case in point, something happens to me, I die now, my voting stock goes to Abby. All the non-voting stock goes to Alyssa. So it creates a way in the company to take care of the spouse and the daughter. My dad taught us that. So we've done that all through voting stock, non-voting. We have restrictive stock agreements. Only certain people can buy our stock. So take like Abby's children, my grandchildren. At this point, they aren't on the restrictive stock agreement. So if one of them shows an interest, if we want to do that, then we have to discuss if they should be on the restrictive stock agreement. If not, they would just get money from their parents, so to speak. So we use certain tactics to make sure. I guess what she's trying to get me to say is it's true. There's two kinds of family companies that we learn at the University of Pittsburgh. One is a family-first family company. They do a lot of things to help the family first. We are a business-first family company. So we believe you have to keep oil in the machine, prime the machine to make money for the family, not the other way around. So in a business-first family company, you watch the business first and the business takes care of the family. So it's set up in such a way, a business-first family company that can be transferred from one generation with the voting, non-voting stock. Yeah, so that's what we do.
That's great. And internally, you want to keep morale high and you don't want employees feeling like, oh, this person just walks in. Nepotism. You don't want to have someone feel like your company is just flooded with nepotism. So what is your advice to companies to help prevent that?
Yeah, I think it's at building generational competencies. Like in our company, if you want to go in the family business and you're a stockholder's child, we had about 5 or 6 of them. We have one. My sister Barbara has 4, and my sister Debbie had 1. We have in writing that you have to have a passion for business. You have to be a college graduate. I'll tell you why in a second. And we pay market wages for owners coming in. Now, the college graduates only because we've seen friends of ours that have kids that want to be the most expensive truck driver known to the world, or they work in the office and never want to leave after high school and then want more money than the one running the company. So in our company, when the youth comes in, A, they have to have a skill they bring to the party, and B, they're paid market wages. Now, I'm maybe exaggerating. Maybe they're paid a little more than market wages. And 3 is they have to have a passion for the business, which usually means they've worked there a little bit as a kid. We like them to work someplace else too, but we like to start early if they want to. Abby was hanging out at 5 years old, coming to work, cleaning the office. And at 10, she was doing our marketing brochures. And at 15, she was doing marketing brochures. And when she was at college, she was doing stuff for us on the side. So yeah, that's how we teach. That's how we get around nepotism. That's how we get around entitlement. Pardon my French, the ones in our family come in prepared.
Yeah.
They're business people. Case in point, Abby. We didn't say, hey, Abby, do you want to be in the business? She said, hey, Dad and Mom, I want to be in the business. It's different.
Well, if you have 4 or 2 kids and one is great at business and one isn't, like, how do you handle that?
I have no idea. Now, what my parents did is they told us we can be whatever we want to be, and we are who we think we are. My sisters were great at business. They just wanted to cash out, and now they do other things. We gave them a chance to cash out. That's the key, I think. The key is if you're going to give someone stock, have them the way they can get rid of the stock. Money. Everyone wants to be heard. It's important to let everybody be heard. It's not important, I don't think, that you do everything on consensus. but I think everybody
Mhm.
has to be heard. So in our family, the ones that don't work in the company, my mother gave them other things too. When she died, my mother treated everybody but me more special because they didn't own the company. I wanted it that way. So yeah, there's ways parents can even it up, so to speak.
Mm.
Most parents do.
Yeah. And I think too, like everything you've talked about, like it sounds like if you have a plan in place to help people succeed, you also have a plan in place to prevent people from really able to destroy the company that shouldn't be able to because those assets are protected.
That's true.
Okay. Where do you feel like you're an expert in succession planning?
I actually think I'm the jack of all trades, master of none, but I've gone through it a lot. What I'm an expert is it's event driven. You can't control it. It's the
Mm,
circles again. It's the family part. I'm also an expert at the big picture. So I see pretty clearly that family companies, we have patient capital. We I learned this from our Asian friends at IOMA. You don't have to pay everybody back in 3 and 4 years. The beauty of family companies, what we've done and done well, is we extend payments to people when we buy them out. So it's patient capital. We have a long term. We have 100-year plan. It's survival.
mhm,
So having the long-term vision allows succession to be easier. It's going to happen.
mhm.
People are going to die. There's going to be weird things happening. People get divorced. Kids come and leave. Parents come and leave. I saw my father and his brother. I heard they worked together. They broke up. They bought each other out, and they were buddies. I'm an expert at making it work because I take the long road, and it's a
Mhm.
marathon, not a sprint. And it's going to happen. So I've seen it happen to my grandfather, my father, my mother. I had cancer a couple of times. It's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to
Wow.
Abby. It's going to happen to Alyssa. We all die, and stock has to be transferred, and management has to be transferred. And I'm just an expert in it's happened a couple of times, and I've done it before.
That's great. Talking with Wally, he was more focused on like transparency throughout the whole company and like whether you're part of the family or not part of the family, which I'm sure you do the exact same thing. But I'm wondering if we, for you, like focus on that family aspect that you're talking about, relate more of like he can talk about transparency if you're in the company and trying to like work and not part of the company and making sure that those voices are heard and that everyone's growing together and it's
Yeah,
fine. And then you have a lot of experience of actually dealing with the estate with multiple family members.
I do. But on Wally's side of it, Marie. So yeah, I agree with him 100%. So the trouble we have to be careful of, all of us, is our family is really the Butler Gas family. So our management team runs the company. Right now
Mhm.
it's Abby. She's president and CEO. We have two vice presidents. One's been there 35 years. One is kind of new. One we have from Matheson. He's about 20 years in the industry, and one is very new. So these people run the company. The Butler Gas associates make it happen. So we all have to be careful that we don't
Yeah.
conspire and do all these things behind closed doors and then come back with all these new ideas. One thing we do is we take lots of people to meetings. We use GATA, CGA, IOMA, big IWDC to train our people, just like we use it to train us. So, like
Yep.
Wally and Indian Oxygen, we use the industry to train our people, and we have to have family companies can't exclude non-family managers, and we've always had a family person run our companies, but it doesn't mean it doesn't work the other way. So we try really hard so everyone's included. But it's easier for me too. We only have one child, Abby.
Yeah.
I was the only one in my family that wanted to buy the business. My father didn't say, "Who can I give it to?" He said, "Who wants to buy it?" I was the only one that made it easier for me. Abbott's the only one that makes it easier for her. We'll see what happens with Abbott's next gen with Coda and Ivy. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's funny. I here in Livermore, it's family called the Wenties, and they're like the oldest winery in California or in the United States, oldest family ran company or winery in the United States. And she was explaining that she's fifth gen, but sixth gen, there's already seven grandkids. And I was like, that's just like how it's just gonna keep going and going. Like, how do you decide?
Pitt calls that a cousin consortium. Those are hard. When you have a whole lot of people owning 5 and 6% of the stock, we actually try to avoid that through our restrictive stock agreement. So we try to stop
Mm.
that watering down of the stock with cash instead of stock.
Can you elaborate on that? That's great.
Yeah, it's easier when you have fewer people and they're all very competent about business. It's easy for a guy like me to let go of the vine. If I had 8 children and none of them knew much about the gas business, you'd see me holding onto the vine so tightly, I'd be swinging around like Tarzan or something. But now it's easy to let go of the vine because of competency. So it's hard to train everybody. And Pitt calls a whole lot of people own a little bit of stock, a cousin consortium. If they're hard to pass along because a lot of people might have a different vision, different culture, and that creates different companies. So cousin consortiums are hard. We don't have one of those. We have 3 stockholders. It's easier.
Wow.
So we have an easier hand to play.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything I'm missing that you want to like talk about during the panel discussion?
Just age.
Ah,
Everybody waits too long, just the way it is. I couldn't wait long because my dad died. But I learned so much from my mother those 25 years with her, and she owned her own company, and we had to rent her assets. So I just wish I would have had more time with my dad. That I guess my advice to the younger generation is learn from your parents, get in faster, and do more important projects early. And the advice for the senior generation is let go of the vine. Don't wait so long. The more Abity does, the better she does it. She was ready in her 20s. I think
mm-hmm.
some people wait too long, parents, to let their next gens step up and do the hard assignments. I was always allowed to do the hard assignments. My dad trusted me. My dad trusted me. It was easier for me to trust Abity because I was just learned. I was taught that you have to trust if people are competent, trust them, put them in, let them do the job. So it wasn't weird or strange for me to watch Abity in her late 20s running parts of the company. It was expected, and she did well.
Yeah, and it's also nice because she's able to experience those giant moments of like failure or decision making, whatever, and you're still around where she can go and talk to you. Versus like if it's handed off after someone's passed, you don't have that opportunity to go and get their advice or buckets of wisdom.
Yeah, maybe that's one more story. And my dad, because he was dying and he knew it, he made me at Boston University when I was a senior. He made me become a salesman. I wasn't ready to be a salesman. I didn't want to be a salesman. I didn't know anything, but he wanted me to fail someplace else. So I didn't know
Mhm.
that back then. But my last semester at school, I was selling Johnson and Johnson first aid kits, kind of door to door, like a fuller
Wow.
brush person. And I didn't sell anything. It was very much of a bad proposition. So I learned from failure. So when I came back to the company and there were people there to help me, I'd already failed someplace else. And he was protecting
Mm.
me from failing in front of everybody when he was dying. If I would have just jumped in and been like some like brash boss's kid kind of thing, but I was humbled by my lack of success in being a salesperson. So I think my dad taught me a lesson by letting me fail someplace else first, because we all learn from sometimes parents don't want the kids to fail in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to fail early, which helped me.
No, that's great. I also didn't know you went to Boston University. I went there for a little bit.
Did you? All right.
I
Very
did.
cool.
Yeah.
I was there a little before you, Mo. I was there 1971 to 1975. So I was there a
Hey,
little before you. Yeah.
a little before me, but that sounds like a very fun time to be in Boston. So
Oh, hey. I saw the
70s.
Grateful Dead about every other weekend. We saw the Grateful Dead or the Rolling Stones or somebody. We had great concerts.
That is crazy. Yeah, Jake's dad lived there in the 70s and he said that he snuck in to see the Beatles at one point. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
amazing. But
Boston's a great city. Great city.
yeah, super fun place. That is great advice. Anything else I'm missing in regards to what you want to
No, well,
share?
just one more thing.
Yeah.
I always, being that I had to be in business with my mother and sisters, and my wife's our treasurer, the boy girl thing was easy for me. I always saw my mother balanced our books when I was learning the business. My mother ran the inside of the company. Now my wife does that, so it's kind of cool. I've always thought that it's easy to have women in the gas business. Maybe some people didn't. So that all that all that help and mentoring by my mother and wife and sisters was very good for me. And that's unusual, I think, in the gas business. And that helped me a lot.
It
So
totally
Abby,
is.
moving ahead is just natural in our family. That's the way things work.
Yeah. And I think Abby's one of the biggest leaders in our industry currently. And she's a female, just totally getting after it. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Marie. It's my pleasure. And you take care of
Yeah.
yourself. Say hi to Dad.
Thank you. I will. And have a good rest of your night.